I first got interested in the outdoors literally just because I would explore in the backyard with my brothers, and we like found this like terribly disgusting swamp in our backyard, and we'd like go there together, challenge each other and challenge ourselves in the outdoors in a way that we can't in traditional learning spaces, using the outdoors as a catalyst for learning and for growth, both in a traditional academic perspective and then also just like on a humanity level. A lot of communities that are underrepresented and are marginalized have lesser access to the outdoors.
So I'm Jen. I started getting interested in just the outdoors in general was after my time in the service. I got home and it was a very therapeutic place for me. And I started looking around as I was exploring the outdoors, and I was like, you have to be able to eat something out here. And so then that started my exploring of foraging. And then the continued interest, though, was when I had my daughter, and just introducing her and just viewing the world and nature in her lens was just extremely inspiring. Growing up in Parkland in Tacoma, I didn't grow up in the best parts of the city. And so, just seeing how I was hindered from that experience growing up, I just kind of wanted to bring this back to my community and give these kids the ability to just explore outdoors in a safe space.
I'm still trying to really determine environmental justice. And for us at our organization, one of the biggest pieces is we want to get individuals outdoors in a recreation type of way. So most of our programs, we focus, from birth to adult type of programs, mostly with youth, but at the same time, we can do adult programs, family programs, like the camping, hiking, fishing. Something we're doing now with social distancing and trying to figure and walk through the waters of it is archery. So that's one sport, you can do, or recreation activity you can do. And then another one is geocache. So if you haven't heard of geocaching, it's using the handheld GPS devices and then going out exploring nature. So those are two. If anybody's looking for ideas or thoughts in regards to what can we do outdoors in a recreation sort of way, but in a social distance way as well. And one of the founding things, because my sister and I, we didn't grow up doing outdoor activities. So it wasn't like we were even like swimming or camping or hiking. We had some touch points with like Girl Scouts, but we were really like city kids, red light, green light, double dutch, tag, right up and down the street. And so our thing is now, when we created Let's Go Outdoors and came up with it, it was more so because we wanted to really introduce more people of color in cities where you don't find, outdoor experiences in the same way as maybe suburban or where there's a lot of green space. And then as we move into the environmental justice piece, we started to learn even as being a person of color myself, I do notice where I live and who I live near, living closer to those facilities, recycling plants, things like that. And we know that we need to get more people in city communities in their outdoor spaces so that they can recognize the injustices that are kind of happening in their community as well. But sometimes it's hard to just say, hey, look at all the threats here. Let's actually take part in something that's enjoyable. So that's one of the bottom lines that we're focusing on, is really recognizing the fun that can be had, but also we need to have the fun in order to bring people outdoors, in order to actually start, strengthening our minds, increasing our knowledge of what's right next to us as well. So
the ability to pause, it gives opportunity for introspection and for connectedness in a way that I don't think we're able to achieve in traditional brick and mortar classrooms. I think that it's harder to sort of remove all of the hierarchies and the labels and everything that we've got going on in traditional society. And when we get out of those spaces, we sort of remove ourselves from those identities and we can connect in different ways. Just being able to see students be able to take a break, see young people be able to be free from whatever pressures or stress they are experiencing in society, and just like for 1 second, like, let's just sit and draw this tree together. that has been the most powerful thing that I've witnessed.
Having youth really take a moment to pause in the outdoor space. And however, looking at our lessons, as educators, as being out in the field, like how are we giving that time to have kind of that pause, but also making it an equitable pause, an inclusive pause, and really looking at the diversity. So it's just something to keep in mind, because I'm finding that that's one of the pieces that leads to environmental justice as well, really looking at things through a lens of how diverse, how equitable, how inclusive are the lessons that I'm even speaking. Because if I'm speaking and teaching about something, is it actually giving that process, that thought process, to lead to environmental justice as a concept? So
when I was growing up, I was in the city, but I actually was right next door to some swamplands. And so that was my only exposure to nature. And so I think about the nature that we have surrounding us in Tacoma as well. This is, places that are accessible to the public, but then it's not accessible to everybody still, though. And I think about those things all the time. But yeah, it just kind of aligns, like these children, they have this space and this availability, but it's also still so foreign to them. And being in Tacoma and trying to introduce these children to the outdoors in a familiar way to them is also difficult too. So,
but one of the biggest challenges we have is working with youth, especially at their schools, because the schools are primarily in concrete landscapes, and we're saying, oh yeah, we're going to get outdoors, we're going to explore nature. And we do get it where even teachers are like, what, you want to come to my class? And there's no nature out here, or there's not. And it's so disappointing in a way that even teachers aren't kind of connecting that there is an outdoor landscape that can be utilized. However, at one point in time in my life, I'm like, there's nothing outdoors here, because again, I grew up in city. So it's like, okay, there isn't, it's just concrete. But there are so many things that we can look beyond. I mean, we really do a lot of birding sessions, because we talk a lot about urban birds. And there is, the Cornell Lab for Ornithology, and they have multiple grants, and they do the urban birding, Celebrate Urban Birds grant. That's a small one that really helped us to connect with youth, to introduce them to birding. And then also another piece that we do is kind of like that bio blitz, like what can you find? And then another youth-oriented activity that's really across the board everywhere is stormwater, or green stormwater infrastructure, looking at our waterways, where's the water going? And then helping youth to really think about what are careers they can move into as well. Because that's one of the biggest pieces that we're focusing on too. Is like, how do we start to move our youth from just thinking about their environment through touch point activities to then actually taking on a deeper connection with it, like kind of moving in that direction, and then moving them into some type of action where they can potentially move into employment, a possible career, or just really start to become activists in their neighborhood, cleaning up their neighborhood. So it's more like starting these touch points and moving it through. And that's hard to do. However, our organization is starting to make strides in that and creating this ladder of engagement, as they call it. And but starting with those little challenges that you're talking about, Jen, it's like, those challenges of really expanding your mind in a landscape that doesn't exactly connect to it.
Redefining what exploration means and what that can look like. And like my whole goal was always like, we got to build little explorers, like people that like have that adventure inside of them, that I think is much more accessible for those that do grow up in like every summer we go to Vermont or whatever, you know what I mean? Where as opposed to in cities, there's like a lot of studies that are done that most people in cities don't leave their like city block radius. So it's really reframing the way that they're literally walking through the spaces that they're in and like perceiving the world around them.
I think one of the biggest ways that we can really challenge ourselves and look beyond ourselves is through partnerships. I think that that's really the biggest piece, is really saying, How do we partner? Because, if we're really trying to reach communities, really trying to say, okay, environmental justice, it starts with a neighborhood, it starts with a community, it starts locally. And you have to find places that are in the neighborhoods or that people are connected to start somewhere. Who can we listen to? What voices can we gain? Which isn't easy work. And I think sometimes people want the easy way out. And there's no easy, We haven't come this far in so many years, and it be easy. We have years of work to put into this. And the only way we can do it is really through partnerships. And where do you look? Look to organizations that, have some diversity or have a commitment to it. Go beyond ourselves and just dig deep and work hard, because it's not an overnight fix. Environmental justice is not that. So I think starting with small steps, and I believe like the organizations that we're all representing and our vision and our minds and what we like to do is those small steps in outdoor recreation.
Like ask for help and work in partnership.
I love that you said that, ask for help, because sometimes nobody does. We all want to do it on our own. Like, yes, we think we're all brilliant, which we are, but at the same time.
How are you supposed to be a part of a community if you're not involving yourself in that community as well with that partnership with them? So, yeah.
I know for me, it was there was a huge learning curve to as an individual, as a person, you come into your, if it's your chosen career path, if it's what you want to dedicate your life to, it's you go into it with your objectives and what you are hoping to get out of it and what you would like to see. And I think that what I learned really quickly is that none of that matters. What matters is getting your getting that pulse on the community. What is it that the community needs? Meeting them where they're at and providing, how do we connect, the environment with community need, economic empowerment. And a lot of that is really just first starting by understanding the history. I think that, I love that Jenn, you're a history major, because I think that it is so important to just really understand the history of the land and of the spaces that we're operating on, and understanding okay, based on this history, based on what this land is speaking to us, what is it that we can then put back into the environment. And I think that it is hard to do that as a single organization. It's it has to be all these organizations coming together from a variety of places to make it this holistic thing. And I think that's one of the challenges of being in this space, is that it can't just be done by the specialists in the field. It has to be a community effort, because it is a community outcome.
And then one of the biggest things too is really looking at youth. And I know that's it's sometimes hard for me, because I feel like I'm getting older, and Jenn, I got 2 kids too. So, and I feel I'm disconnected and I'm trying, go in, but I know that youth are, they're at a core of this, and it's finding out how to use their voice as well. And then some of it, like you said, looking at that history, and that can be where you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to take a risk, and sometimes that can feel scary, it can feel hurtful, and that's the honesty that this is going to take. Our organization, like I said, we don't go deep into it because we haven't figured it out yet, but these conversations remotivate me and make me dig deeper and say, yes, we've got to really start to create some type of consistent pathway. And it sounds like, Sarah, you've got, this is exceptional to have these kinds of talks, because it's actually putting something in motion on a consistent basis.
Just to plant that seed. You don't have to elaborate, but I think definitely planting that seed with that child. We have so much interference as adults because we have so many different inputs that are coming in, but children, they're just so honest too. So the input is just very real on how they respond to you. Just stepping back and just letting them explore on their own. And they'll come to you if they have a question, and you can, give them an answer. But I felt, even with my own daughter, when we go out to the woods, and my son, the more you back off, the more they learn to explore themselves freely too. So they become more confident in what they can touch and see and explore. So, but I feel like backing off is the biggest thing for me. because you want to be involved, you want to show them, but then they also have to be able to create themselves. So
I do agree that like darts, like being able to get out of the kids' way to like allow them that opportunity. I think that a lot of that does start with adults in the space sort of doing that unlearning. I do think that that's a huge piece of it, because especially coming from an educator's perspective, it's like, well, like structure is like sort of inherent to the entire field. Even in informal education, there's a structure that is approved versus not. So I do think that there is a significant amount of unlearning that has to take place on the professionals side of things. But I also think it's if you Google the word outdoor and like who do you see on the screen, and it does all look literally like the same three people are outdoors, and so I think like a lot of it, when I think about this question, I'm like, okay, there's a redefining that needs to take place about what does it mean to exist and enjoy the outdoors and partake in it. I love what you said, Jen, about just like taking a step back, because I think that that's a critical piece to it. Like stop coming at things with structure and really empowering people to explore on their own.
Ask people, especially, and so many times what happens is, and I've only started to think about this a little bit more because our organization was contracted by another organization to actually do survey work. And this wasn't survey work in the park. They wanted the external audience, so those that don't visit the park, especially people of color, because again, that's where our organization focuses, but wanted to see, what are they visiting the park? Why aren't they? Is there something they want to see? And I think more of that needs to happen, because so many times we get so caught up in who's already visiting, and we want, those perfect survey responses for funding purposes, and we want to tell all the awesome things we're doing in the park. And sometimes we miss the inclusiveness of the community because we're not surveying those that are maybe not visiting the park or not visiting when you might see them, and understanding how to use that information. So one of those things is, I think, how it can be, there can be an increase in the diversity of who's going to the parks. And then I think that there's a lot more that can be done to learn what types of activities might engage those that might not, visit the park as much, because we all have different experiences, cultural things that we like to do when we recreate. So I think that has to be taken into consideration.
As I've gotten to spend more time, especially with like young people of color, that like my ultimate goal is like, get more involved in the outdoors, join this program, or, advocate for a community, become an activist, like all of these things. And I think it really does go back to like, are we serving the community like based on the needs that they have? And I think like a lot of communities struggle with accessibility to resources. And I think a lot of that sort of can be, addressed with like economic empowerment. I do think there's like a huge tie in there. What's most helpful is just like planting that seed, helping to create that awareness and that appreciation for the outdoors and the environment and all people. And of course, doing so in a way that is inclusive, and making sure that we're checking ourselves in like every single thing that we're doing, like the language we're using, the activities we're designing, everything. So continuing to grow ourselves while like building this awareness and this appreciation, and then encouraging people to like, I used to really want everyone to like grow up and become an environmentalist, like grow up and become, the next person that's gonna, like write policies or whatever. But I think that awareness, that if people can like feel connected and feel proud of their outdoor spaces, whatever field they get into, they're going to make sure that they are somehow connected back and somehow giving back to the communities that they have helped to create along the way, and of the places that they care deeply about. So like really, like I want I want somebody that's in the tech industry who found a startup to then like donate a few $1 million back to the environment. You know what I mean? Like you can come out here and, you know, like plant a tree with me, but I also want, you know, like reinvest in your communities. And I think the way we get there is like by like helping people to build that appreciation of like, why does it matter? Like, what are we working towards? You don't have to be on the front lines with me, but I do, you know, I do want you to be invested in some way.
Having more of, you know, people of color be, you know, represented in outdoor environmental justice. When it comes to children anyway, like I think about what is for here specifically in Washington with all of our rain. We have a lot of rain. We have unpredictable days. And I think about all the children I've ever worked with, the hindrance that keeps them from getting outdoors and enjoying nature is their gear. I feel like economics is like a big factor on helping these children. Just giving them shoes, proper shoes to wear outside is taught a lot of kids who'll go outside in just like sliders, just like flip-flops, and it's raining out. And it's, you know, it's not anything on them and their desire to wear that shoe that day. It also is just their ability to what they have access to. So I feel like every time the representation part comes out, it comes for youth in a sense. I think that is a big factor. It's not the only factor. During the summer months, I mean, it's a different story. So I think it depends on the season. I think it depends on a multitude of factors.
I think about in the outdoor space, which kind of motivated me to actually say, oh, I want to do more outdoors, was a visit, you know, or I was actually working out west in Utah. And part of how we got involved was with a hiking group. And back then I was in my very early 20s. So, and then the hiking group though consisted of all old white men. And, you know, we were thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know, because it was with my sister. Oh my goodness, I don't really know if we really should do this. But I mean, they were so welcoming to us. But the big thing is the outdoor piece it was a hiking club. And again, it was probably about 8 old white men. They were retired. They were probably in their 60s. And they were on these huge, and we were on this hike, but these boulders, I mean, they were huge. And they were like tossing us the rope, climb on up. And we're nervous, like, can they really pull us up? And you know, that kind of thing. But seeing that kind of passion, and at that age, you know, again, us in our 20s, them in their 60s, seeing them outdoors, enjoying it, still doing that, I was just like, wow, I want to be able to get on a boulder one day like that and feel comfortable at my age and do that. So that was one of those moments where I just was like, wow, the outdoors, it's infinite in ways, and I feel so small because of all the boulders out there, but then feel so strong because there are these individuals that didn't discriminate against me. They were just, you know, kind. So it was a really cool experience. So
I guess like powerful experiences for me that I can remember at this time that like, I really like to do this thing where I always like open up, like, you know, tell me like adjectives that describe your city. And like, you know, a lot of times, especially in cities, like people are using like really negative adjectives to describe like the places that they live and the places that they're connected to. So it's always, I mean, like trash, like dirty, I mean, smelly, like all of those things sort of like come up at the beginning. But I remember like this one student in particular that I like met when I was in New York City doing like a single day, like we turned the roof into like their community garden space where they were going to like learn about a bunch of different like plants and things like that. So after, you know, we had like showed them before what it looked like, and we spent all day working on it, and then like went downstairs and ate and came back upstairs, and there's this one student that like all day like didn't want to work, that it was hot outside, you know, they're thirsty, have to use the bathroom, like anything to get away. And then at the end, like that student was the most vocal, like they're like, this is the most beautiful school that I've been to. And I just like, I was like really melting inside. You know, it's really great to see that shift in students, especially like challenging students that you're like, oh man, like I don't know I don't know if they're going to get anything out of this one. But I remember that student in particular like really was like proud of all the work that they had done and like didn't want to leave, wanted to like show people around. And I just thought like, what a really great way to like actually see the beginning of ownership and like what that actually can look like. And is really great. You can see a lot of things with young people, which is they're so expressive. So that was a really good day.
We were taking a break and we were just talking about, the farm animals that were at the farm. Well, one girl was like, well, I just want to be a farm horse so then I can just stay at the farm and just somebody feed me all day and all this and that. And then I was just like, well, what if something happened to the farmer and the farmer couldn't feed you that day? And then two of the other girls were just like, I want to be a wild horse so I don't have to rely on a farmer and all this and that. And he just went into all these other reasonings on why they wanted to be free. And our innate desires to always be free from free to explore and free to be whom we are. And I just thought that was like a really beautiful thing to learn from two 8-year-olds who were just arguing over it. And I was like, okay, I thought that was really great.
So thanks. Happy to see you all. That's what we do. Let's go outdoors.